Okay, I'm ready.
Okay.
All right, hi everyone. So today we're going to do another lesson on the deductive operators. We looked at conditionals last time, so today we're going to look at disjunctive operators for a little bit. So let's go ahead and spin this guy. All right, so a disjunctive argument uses this disjunctive operator, and the disjunctive operator means or. Okay. On either side of this operator, you're going to have variables. These variables are called disjuncts. So that's a disjunct, and that's a disjunct. So in the disjunctive argument, you have your first premise, which reads either P or Q. Either P or Q. Premise 1 will have your options, P or Q. Premise 2 always negates one of your options. It doesn't have to negate the Q, it can negate the P, it's fine. And the conclusion will be the one that it didn't negate. The premise 2 does not negate, which will be P. Remember, with deductive reasoning, you want to preserve the truth, right, from the conclusion to the premises to the conclusion. This is saying there's two options here, P or Q. In order for you to guarantee that there's just one option and not both options, you have to negate one of them. So that's the only way to get a certainty that you have one is to negate the other one, and so that's why we negate it and not affirm it. There's another reason we have to negate one of the disjuncts here, besides what I just said, and that's because there's two uses of the word or. There's an inclusive and an exclusive use of the word or. This one, here or, means P or Q or both. And then exclusive means P or Q, but not both. You can imagine a scenario too where, say I bought pizza for the class and I said, hey everyone, I bought pizza, you can have pepperoni or cheese. You wouldn't take that statement to mean that you couldn't have more than one piece of pizza or couldn't have both pepperoni and cheese. You would understand that the or functioned there as the options for you. Hey everyone, I got pizza for you, you can have pepperoni or cheese. So that's an inclusive use of the word or. An exclusive one is going to be something like this. Hi everyone, I bought pizza. You can have one of each. We have cheese. You have one or the other, rather. We have cheese. So you can either have the cheese or you can choose the pepperoni. And so there's an exclusive use of the word or and an inclusive use. As you're looking at standardizing or representing your disjunctive argument, we don't know what use of the or you're using, or what kind of or you're using. So to guarantee that we have the correct conclusion, we negate one of them. So this claim says either P or Q, and we say, well, is it the case that both? No. Well then, which one? Okay, we'll say not P. Well, then what happens is, this one has to be the conclusion. The reason why is because, look, you have premise 1 says if either P or Q. And if those are the only two options, you can have one, and you say not P, what that means is that all that's left is this, right? Q. So you're guaranteeing the truth of your conclusion. Of course, you have to make sure that you're not doing something like a false dilemma, where you can say there's a lot of options of pizza here. And there's pepperoni, there's cheese, there's, I don't know, sausage and vegetarian. Okay, so I say to you, look, you can have pepperoni or you can have cheese. And I don't tell you anything else. Well, that's a false dilemma. For what you understand, these are the only two options, right? You don't know about these other ones, but there are lots of other ones. Say you don't want either of them, but between these, you're like, well, I don't want cheese, so I'll take the pepperoni. But you don't want a false dilemma because there's other options like vegetarian, right? Or olives, or I don't know what people put. Pineapple, who knows? Lots of options. Same thing is true of a lot of arguments too. There are usually a lot of options, and people only focus on two. So if you a dilemma, choosing between one or the other, doing this disjunctive type of argumentation, the dilemma then has to either include all of the options, or it has to focus on two that are relevant. Then you have to exclude the other ones in some way. Now, we don't need to worry about that too much, because that's when you teach you like the formal, the way it maintains its validity. And again, the way to work on a disjunctive argument is to negate one of the disjuncts. We have Q or P. Not Q, therefore P. So this is the rule. This is the rule behind the disjunctive argument. Now, what I want to do is I want to show you some more complicated argument forms that include the conditional operator and the disjunctive operator. So, the first one is the constructive dilemma. So we have either P or Q. If P, then R. If Q, then M. Therefore, either R or M. Let's see, make sure I'm not doing this funky. Yes. So what we want to do to understand how this works is we want to try to solve for one of these. So let's say, how do we get M all by itself? Why is the case that this is R or M? Why is that the conclusion? So we can solve for one of these pretty easily by applying those rules that we learned earlier. The rules we learned earlier are the modus ponens, the modus tollens, and now the disjunctive syllogism, or the disjunctive. The modus ponens states if P, then Q, P, therefore Q. The modus tollens states if P, then Q, not Q, therefore not P. And disjunctive syllogism states P or Q, not Q, therefore P. These are our rules that we're using. These are the forms that we are knowing in this class: modus ponens, modus tollens, disjunctive syllogism. This one's the either or, and both of these are if-thens. Remember, this is an if-then operator, the conditional. If-then, this is a not. That's a not. If P, then Q, P, Q. If P, then Q, not P. Okay, So what we want to do now is apply these rules to kind of figuring out how to work this argument here. The first thing we'll do is we'll try to figure out, well, how did they get this? How do we get m? And to do that, well, let's just kind of run through it. So we'll say the first premise is either p or q. The next premise then has to do, so look over here, next premise has to do with r. Okay, well, are we talking about r yet? No, not yet. Okay, so let's ignore premise 2 for now. So since we're talking about m, let's look at the premise that has m in it, which is premise 3. Okay, so we have the first premise here, either p or q, and we have the third premise over there, and I'm going to represent it as a 2 on this side. So the premise over here is then either, actually, let's not bring it over yet. No, we will bring it over. Okay, so premise 2 then will be either q, if q, then m. We brought that over from here. So look here, we have premise 1, which has the q. We have premise 2, which has the q and the m. We want to know how to get the m. To get the m, then we apply some rules. The first one we apply is look at the operator. It's the disjunctive syllogism. That's the operator. So to know what rule to apply, look at the operations that are happening. If either p or q. Okay, what is it talking about? Oh, disjunctives. How do we figure out which variable is true? Which one do we? Because we want to get one of these all by itself. We want either the p by itself or we want the q by itself. You can't do anything with this. They're like kind of bound together. In order to do anything, in order to get the m, then we have to free something from this first premise. Clearly the q. Well, maybe not clearly, shouldn't say that. It becomes clear probably later in the term when you start internalizing some of these rules. So remember modus ponens over here? First premise is a conditional if p then q. Second one is saying, hey, look, we have the guarantee of something, namely the guarantee of q. We have two options. We either have p or q. What we want is q. Okay? So let's go ahead and move this one now. And in order to get q all by itself, what we need to do is negate one of these. So we'll run this rule, this disjunctive syllogism here, and we'll say not p. And this will be this disjunctive syllogism. Oh, sorry, that won't happen yet. Next, then we'll get the premise 3. And here will be q, and that will be from the disjunctive syllogism, lines 2 and 1. 1, 2. Now we have the q all by itself, free. It's a free agent, do what he pleases, and right now he pleases to operate on this premise 3 over here, which we will represent as 4 to maintain our numbering. So now we have this premise here, we're moving it down here, and this is going to be if q, then m. Okay, my good people, how then are we to get m? We have to apply one of these rules. Do we want not m? Or sorry, rather not q? Is that what we want? No. So we shouldn't be negating the m, and we couldn't do that anyway, right? Because there's nothing to do that with. So modus tollens is not going to work for us. What about disjunctive syllogism? Is there a disjunctive operator here? No, there's not. What about there? Nope, that one's a free agent. Oh, this is the one that's going to work for us. P, Q, P. We want it, if this is the guarantee of that, this requirement of that. Remember, Patricia, bring handbag. P guarantees Q, and Q, the requirement for P. Okay, so you have line 3. This line 3 has this guy right here. This line 3 can affirm the Q, and by affirming the Q means that you get the M. And so finally, we can get our conclusion 5, which is M, our friend, all by herself, and this is going to be a modus ponens, lines 3 and 4. So we have the M. Notice we did all this stuff applying 2 of the rules. I'm going to run through this one more time, but this time we're going to solve for R. Start with the first premise. Either P or Q. What we want to solve for is a R. So do we want to mess with premise 3? No, we don't need to. It has nothing to do with R at the moment. So we're just going to focus on premise 1 and premise 2. What's that one? In order to get the R, we need to do something to line 2 here. And namely, what we need to do is apply one of the rules. And the rule we need to apply is this friend right here. Our friend, again, modus ponens. So to get the R, you have to get the P all by itself. Premise 1 has either P or Q. Premise 2, we want to get the R all by itself. To get the P all by itself, to get the P all by itself, we have to get rid of one of them. So we get rid of the Q. What that does is it frees up the P like this, because right, if this is not Q, then all you have left is P, right? If those are the options. And if this is true, then not Q, then that's the only thing that can be there. So now we have P all by itself. We're going to take premise 2 and bring her down here. Either P or R, if P then R. Oh, and look, people, we have P. We have the guarantee of R. So we got our conclusion, 5, R. We get that from the modus ponens, lines 3 and 4. And this one right here was a disjunctive syllogism. Lines and we have the R. So far we've done this. We've isolated the M and the R. So we figured out how to get that. But why is it the case that we have an either or here? Remember the disjunctive operation. Why is that there? Well, that's there because we started with one. And these are conditional statements. Either P or Q. Now think of the language. Either P or Q. Okay, one of these is the right, they're saying. If P, then R. If Q, then M. Okay, so what happens then is, because we only can have one or the other, and we know that if P happens, then R happens. And if Q happens, then M happens. Then we can conclude that either R will happen or M will happen, because R rather is a requirement for P, and M is a requirement for Q. P is good enough to guarantee the existence of R, and Q is good enough to guarantee the existence of M. Remember. I guess there's other folk running around with handbags too. So you started with the disjunctive, you end with the disjunctive, and the reason why is because these are hypothetical. These are if-then claims. We don't know. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I think it's enough for one deductive argument video, and hopefully this was helpful for you.